Hi everybody. In this video tip on model selection, I'm going to talk about pretender variables. Now, a pretender variable is a term that I first came across in a book by David Anderson. And what it is, it's a variable that appears in a highly ranked model when using AIC or similar metrics, but actually has very little inferential power, so it explains little variation in the data. And what we're going to talk about is just how to spot those type of pretender variables in an analysis. So I've got an example here. So here we have a model selection table. It's a bit of a dummy example using some simulated data, but I've fit 4 models to this data set, and just in terms of model notation, I'm using a sort of standard R type notation here. So Y is my response variable, and then I have 2 variables of interest that I've just called variables A and B. And so I fit 4 models to this data set. And what we can see is that from our top ranked model, variable A appears to be fairly important. And then also in the second ranked model, we have variable A, but we also have variable B in there as well. And if we just compare these 2 models, so if we compare these 2 models here, just these top 2, what we can see is that the second ranked model is reasonably close in terms of AIC, and also has some amount of AIC model weight there. But if we look at the log likelihood values, what that suggests is that this extra variable B hasn't really explained much more variation in the data. So our metric of twice the negative log likelihood, that's the measure of overall fit of the model to the data set. You can think about it in terms of how much unexplained variation in the data, how much variation in the data is unexplained by the model. And so what you can see is this, by adding this one additional parameter, variable B, we haven't really decreased that value very much, so we haven't really explained much more variation in the data. And so what happens is that this model that includes variable B ends up being quite highly ranked relative to that model with just variable A, simply because it just has one additional parameter being estimated, which we can see here, but it doesn't actually explain much more variation in the data. So this is variable B would be considered a sort of pretender variable in this instance, because it's appearing in a highly ranked model but doesn't really explain much more variation in the data. And another way you can sort of see that is, if we look at sort of further down the model selection table, this model here, we just have Y tilde 1. That's just our R notation to say there's no covariates in that model. It's just simply an intercept only model. The model where we include variable B is actually below that. So when we include variable B with variable A as well, that's sort of a higher ranked model than just the intercept only model. And so when we include variable B, that hasn't really changed that ranking very much. It hasn't sort of appeared higher than the intercept only model. Whereas if variable B is actually important, what we would expect to see is that actually this model here would be above that one that has only the intercept. So there you have it. Hopefully you found that useful. Just these pretender variables. Again, these are variables that appear in highly ranked models on the basis of AIC or other metrics, but don't actually have much inferential power. They don't explain much variation in the data. There you go. Until next time, see you later.